Today, I have 3 stories that I have prepared. One of them, I will be reading in Spanish, just because I can. However, everything will be on screen for you to read, including the first one. Spain go de Kinay. It's okay. It's okay. Because this first story, I will be putting up on screen. It's not too long, but it's enough for you to calm down, maybe get some tea. I have some tea with me. I am drinking chamomile with a little bit of sugar in it. But this first story is not too scary. Nothing too ominous about it. I do love chamomile, it's my sleep tea, so I will be trying to sleep after this if I don't give myself nightmares. Followed by these 2 stories that have always really stuck with me since I read them some time ago. This first story is a little bit of an Aesop's fable, if just a little bit scary for maybe children. Don't get too scared. There's nothing super graphic with this first story, or maybe there is at the end. I read over it, but overall, it's pretty nice. It has a nice little moral at the end. It's okayness. I'm not good at scary things either, so I will hold your hand through this. It's gonna be okay. As long as you have your tea and you have your blanket over yourself, everything's gonna be just okay. Because, as we all know, if you have the blanket over yourself and you cover yourself completely, nothing can get you. So it's all okay. So, comfy. Okay. Let me just check up on something real quick. Okay, this first story is called The Dog and the Sparrow. But before I pull it up on screen, should I bring out the table? The reading table? I did a little bit of setting up beforehand. That took way too long actually. But it's okay. I learned some stuff and it's okay. It's completely fine if you want to try to fall asleep to this. I'm not going to be screaming or anything. This is supposed to be just a rather calm reading of 3 stories. If you don't pay too much attention to the content of the stories, you can probably sleep easily to it. I know that whenever I try to listen to stories or some kind of podcasts, I usually can't really sleep just because I focus on the words too much. So I end up staying awake. So a lot of these podcasts that are supposed to make you fall asleep don't really work for me for those reasons. Recently, I have been having some luck with certain ASMR streams. They are surprisingly helpful for falling asleep. So, if you have insomnia like I do, you could probably try listening to either soft music, like I listen to this channel called, what was it called? Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. This channel that I listen to is called Space Wave Cosmic Relaxation I used it to sleep a lot. They have a lot of good songs. Hello, how is it going? I am still so I ended up getting sick about 2 weeks back, but I'm mostly back to normal. It wasn't anything major that I know of. I went and got a test for the thing, but ended up coming negative. So I may not ever know what it was. So I have some tea to help with that. This background, probably no one is gonna recognize this background music. But if you do, oh my goodness. Okay, let's set up. So like I said before, this first story will be in Spanish. But it's okay, because I have the book translation right on screen here. So you're completely fine to follow along. I will be reading this in Spanish. El perro y el gorrión. A un perro del pastor le había tocado en suerte un mal amor, un mal amo, que le hacía pasar hambre, no queriendo aguantarlo para más tiempo. El animal se marchó, triste y perezoso. Encontróse en una calle con un gorrión, el cual le preguntó: «Hermano perro, ¿por qué estás tan triste?» Y respondiendo el perro: «Tengo hambre y nada me que comer». Aconsejólo el pájaro: «Hermano, vente conmigo a la ciudad, y yo haré que te hartes». Encaminándose juntos a la ciudad, y al llegar frente de una carnicería, dijo el gorrión al perro: «No te muevas de aquí. A picatazos te haré caer un pedazo de carne». Y situándose sobre el mostrador y vigilando que nadie lo viera, se puso a picotear y tirar un trozo que había al borde, hasta que lo hizo caer al suelo. Cogiólo al perro, llevándosela a una esquina, y se lo zampó. Entonces él dijo al gorrión: «Vamos ahora a otra tienda, te haré caer otro pedazo para que te hartes». Una vez el perro se hubo comido el segundo trozo, preguntóle el pájaro: «Hermano perro, ¿estás ya harto?» «De carne, sí», respondió el perro, «pero me falta un poco de pan». Dijo el gorrión: «Ven conmigo, lo tendrás también». Y llevándolo a una panadería, a picotazos hizo caer unos panecillos. Y como el perro quisiera todavía más, conjúntalo a otra panadería y le proporcionó otra ración. Cuando el perro se la hubo comido, preguntó el gorrión: «Hermano perro, ¿estás ahora harto?» «Sí», respondió su compañero. «Vamos ahora a dar una vuelta por si las afueras». Okay, let me just scroll down. We are at the top of the page, right here. There we are. Salieron los dos de la carretera, pero como el tiempo era caluroso, al cabo de poco trecho dijo el perro: «Estoy cansado, y de buena gana escucharía una siestecita». «Duerme pues», asintió el gorrión. «Mientras tanto, yo me posaré en una rama». Y el perro se tendió en la carretera y pronto se quedó dormido. En esta acercóse un carro tirado por 3 caballos y cargando con 3 cubas de vino. Viendo el pájaro que el carretero no llevaba intención de apartarse para no atropellar al perro, le gritó: «Carretero, no lo hagas que te arruinó». Pero el hombre dijo esto: «No serás tú quien me arruine». Restaló el látigo y las ruedas del vehículo pasan por encima del perro, matándolo. Gritó entonces el gorrión: «Has matado a mi hermano el perro, pero te costará el carro y los caballos». «Bah, el carro y los caballos», se mofó el conductor. «Me río del daño que tú puedas causarme». Se consumió en su camino. El gorrión se deslizó debajo de la lona y se puso a picotear una espita hasta que hizo soltar el tapón, por lo que empezó a salirse el vino sin que el carretero no se notaba, y se vació todo el barril. A cabo de buen rato volvió el hombre, y al ver que goteaba el vino, bajó a examinar los barriles, encontrando que uno de ellos estaba vacío. «¡Pobre de mí!», exclamó. «Aún no lo eres bastante», dijo el gorrión, y volando a la cabeza de uno de los caballos, de un picotazo se sacó un ojo. Al darse cuenta del carretero, empuñó el azadón y lo descargó contra el pájaro con ánimo de matarlo. Pero el avecía escapó, y el caballo recibió en la cabeza un golpe tan fuerte que cayó a muerte. «¡Ay, pobre de mí!», repitió el hombre. «Aún no lo eres bastante», gritó el gorrión. Y cuando el carretero reemprendió su ruta con los 2 caballos restantes, volvió el pájaro a meterse por debajo de la lona y no paró hasta sacar el segundo tapón, vaciándose a su vez el segundo barril. Diose cuenta el carretero demasiado tarde y volvió a exclamar: «¡Ay, pobre de mí!», a lo que replicó su enemigo: «¿Aún no lo eres bastante?». Okay, yeah, we're on track. Repite una vez el gorrión: «Ahora voy a arruinar tu casa», y se alejó volando. Currently on this paragraph. El carretero no tuvo más remedio que dejar el carro y en el camino se marcharse a su casa, furioso y desesperado. «¡Ay!», dijo su mujer, «¡qué día más desgraciado he tenido! He perdido el vino y los 3 caballos están muertos». «¡Ay, marido mío!», respondió la mujer, «¿qué diablo el pájaro que se ha metido en la casa? Ha traído a todos los pájaros del mundo y ahora se están comiendo nuestro trigo». Subió el hombre al granero y encontró millares de pájaros en el suelo acabando de volver todo el grano, y en medio de ellos estaba el gorrión. Y volvió a exclamar el hombre: «¡Ay, pobre de mí!». «Aún no lo eres bastante», repitió el pájaro. «Carretero, aún pagarás lo que con la vida», y echó a volar. El carretero, perdido todos sus bienes, bajó a la sala y sentóse junto a la estufa, mojino y colérico. Pero el gorrión le gritó desde la ventana: «Carretero, pagarás con la vida. You will pay with your life». Cogiendo el hombre el arazadón, arrojólo contra el pájaro, mas solo consiguió romper los cristales sin tocar su perseguidor. Este saltó al interior de la estancia y podándose el hombre del horno repitió: Carretero, pagarás con la vida. You will pay with your life. Loco y ciego de rabia, el carretero arremetió contra todas las cosas, queriendo matar al pájaro, y así destruyó el horno y todos los enseños domésticos, espejos, bancos, la mesa e incluso paredes de la casa, sin conseguir su objetivo. Por fin logró cogerlo con la mano y entonces dijo la mujer: ¿Quieres que lo mate de un golpe? No, gritó él, sería una muerte demasiado dulce. Ha de sufrir mucho más. Me lo voy a tragar. Y se lo tragó de un bocado. Pero el animal empezó a gritarse y alejar dentro de su cuerpo y se subió de nuevo a la boca. Y asomando la cabeza: Carretero, you will pay with your life, se repitió por última vez. Entonces el carretero, teniendo el asador, a su mujer le dijo: Dale al pájaro en la boca. La mujer descargó el golpe, pero errando la puntería, partió la cabeza de su marido, el cual se desplomó muerto, mientras el gorrión escapaba volando. You get what you deserve. It's a very quite the ending here. So if you're just listening, the story here is there's a man that he's not really a great man, and he has a dog. And the dog, because he's so hungry, he ends up just running away. And the dog finds a bird. And this bird helps the dog. He feeds him. He helps him get bread. He gives him some water. And then one day he sees that there's a car coming, or rather not a car, but a wagon, one of those old wagons with horse-drawn wagons. And there's 3 of them. There's 3 horses coming down the road. And the bird yells to the driver, "Stop! You're going to run over my friend." But the driver doesn't care. He's not a great guy. And he ends up running over his own dog that he used to have, that ran away from him because he was such a bad owner. And he ends up killing his own dog. And so this bird, he says, "Driver, you will pay with your life." And this driver doesn't really care. He just laughs at the little bird because it's just a bird. What's he gonna do? And so this bird, he calls all of his friends into the man's house, and they all feed on his grain, on all of his food. And then the man's wife is really mad because they're eating all the food. And so the man's wife wants the man to kill the bird, essentially. And so the man goes everywhere, he flies everywhere, he goes on a rampage trying to kill this bird. But he can't kill the bird. The bird's too good for him. The bird's too fast. It's too small. And so at the very end, he finally traps the bird. And the wife says, "Kill it quickly before it does any more damage." And the man, so full of spite, he says, "Nope, I'm not gonna kill it. I want to savor this bird's death. And so he grabs the bird, he puts the bird in his mouth, and he eats it. But the bird does not go down without a fight. He pecks at the guy's stomach until eventually he manages to kind of go out. Kind of like makes him throw up, kind of, in a way. And so this bird is now in the guy's mouth, but not quite free yet. And so the man says to his wife, quickly, before the bird gets away, take this axe and kill the bird that's in my mouth. And so the wife says, okay, I'm gonna kill the bird. And so they're both in position, and the wife swings the axe down. And what happens? The wife misses, ends up chopping his head off, and the bird gets away. The bird gets away. And what did we learn? What did we learn? Evil man blown the hell out. Yep, seems like it. I'm sure there's some kind of moral here, but it's going by me right now. Point of the story is, don't be mean to birds. That was a pretty quick story, actually. Let me drink some more water. We learned to kill your enemies quickly instead of trying to savor the moments. That's right. It's important to always not waste time, because you see this in the movies or just in media, right? Where it's either in a game or a show or a TV show or whatever, where you have this bad guy. Oh, an example is in the Incredibles, right? 2003, 2005. Pixar movie, The Incredibles. You have Syndrome just kind of like talking to himself, and then Mr. Incredible catches him monologuing. It's very important to not waste time in these kinds of situations. So that is the first story, titled The Sparrow and the Dog, or The Dog and the Sparrow. This is one of the fairy tales that was gathered by the Brothers Grimm. I don't know how old the story is. I just found it the other day, like a couple days ago. I read it over. It seems to be pretty cool. So this next one, I don't remember where I found this next one, but just to preface it, so over the summer, it's pretty hot, right? It's like maybe 100 degrees, maybe 90 degrees, wherever you are, maybe 110 degrees. I know some people who live in a place where it's 110 degrees over the summer. And how do I phrase this? I've visited these locations where it's very hot and you just long for the winter, right? You just really want the winter to come. And so at this time where I'm now, I moved a couple years ago from a hot location to a more temperate region. So where I'm right now is, we actually have seasons. And so there's summer, there's fall, we have winter, and there's spring. But the thing is, the winters are colder than what I'm used to. And so right now for me, even though it's October, it feels like the middle of December for me compared to where I was living before. So I'm basically already wearing my winter clothes right now. I have I have my warm pants. I have a long sleeve. I have a shirt over it. I don't know how cold it gets actually, but cold enough for me to have to put on winter clothes essentially. Let me actually I have a temperature. What is a thermometer here somewhere? Here it is. Okay, so right now in my room it is 60. It looks like 68 degrees approximately Fahrenheit. Celsius, it looks to be like about 18 degrees. So it's like about slightly below room temperature, actually. But for me, room temperature is a little bit cold. I come from a very warm climate, I guess. So I'm just used to the heat. 55 is the ideal. Wow, that's kind of cold for me. But I I don't dislike the cold. Contrarily, I love the cold. I love it so much more than the heat. Just because I can always put on more clothes, right? We don't talk about that. I can always put on more clothes during the winter. I can always put a blanket over myself. I can put on double socks, double pants, double shirts. I can put on a hat, a scarf. But when it's 110 degrees in the summer, middle of July, there's not a whole lot that you can do. You go outside for like 10 minutes and you walk around, maybe do some chores outside, do whatever you have to do. And then like after 5 minutes, you already want to shower again. And so you go to shower, and then you go back outside to continue, and then you want to shower again. Winter fashion is better. Yep, I agree. I definitely agree with that. Winter fashion is so much better. With like my my summer outfits are basically just like a t-shirt, some shorts maybe. And that's basically what I wear for the entire summer. But with the winter, I can wear a t-shirt with an undershirt, like a long sleeve with a t-shirt, a flannel with a t-shirt, a jacket with a t-shirt, and a flannel. There's just so many more combinations that you can do with the winter. I just love winter so much better as a result of that. Winter's so nice. Winter's so nice. I just gotta look for my tabs now. I have lost my tabs. Okay, I found my tabs. Okay, here's one of my tabs. I love winter so much. Okay, let me turn this down. Okay, so I don't know if I've ever been in a blizzard before, but I've heard of them, and I've heard stories about them. So, I'm not sure what an actual blizzard is like, but I found some audio scapes, so to speak. And I mean, it does snow here where I am now, but I think when I went to go visit my parents, I had to go away for like 2 weeks. And so I ended up missing the worst of the winter storm while I was here. While I was visiting my parents, I mean. And so this is a story about a winter storm. And maybe I'll just read it. Maybe I'll just read it. Maybe I'll just read it. Okay. Second story. So, most people probably are used to being really warm inside. Maybe have a campfire inside your chimney. The fireplace inside your chimney, that's what I mean. Not a campfire inside your house. That's how you get carbon monoxide poisoning. Anyways, so you're inside your house. Really warm, comfy, maybe watching a movie, have some popcorn with you. And you have your feet by the fireplace, warming yourself up. And you don't really think about the outdoors in such a time, just because you're so comfy inside. But carbon monoxide poisoning, love. I love it when I get carbon monoxide poisoning. I'm actually, that's one of the things that actually kind of freaks me out actually is, I don't know if I have one of those in my room. I think I do. I think it's required by law in this location where I'm at that every room, or every bedroom rather, is required by law to have a carbon monoxide alarm. I'm pretty sure. It's not really enforced, but I'm pretty sure every bedroom is supposed to have one, so I think I'm safe. Either way, I don't think there's like any realistic chance of that happening in my room since I don't really like burn stuff. I burn stuff outside, but that's besides the point. Okay, so snowstorm outside. I'm looking forward to snow. Okay. When I was an electrician, we always had to install those. It's a very gentle way to go. Yeah, I feel like that's probably... Okay, I might be getting into a little bit of dangerous territory, but I feel like it's the most ethical way, so to speak. So, without going into too many details, I have a background with animals, and one of the established methods to put animals to rest, so to speak, is to have them put into a little box, and you fill it up with carbon dioxide. And so in this way, the animals just kind of fall asleep, and they suffer no pain. And it's kind of... That's basically what you would expect, what would happen during a snowstorm, right? If you were just outside in the snow. I've heard that if you're in the snow for too long, you start to get sleepy, right? You start to get sleepy, maybe a little bit warm, and you kind of get really tired all of a sudden. And you lay down in the snow, and the snow is so comfy. It's cold, a little bit wet, but it's soft. And so you lay down in the snow, and you say, I'm just gonna rest my eyes. I'm just gonna take a nap. I'm just gonna lay down here. And then you close your eyes, and you start to fall asleep. Apparently, you're not supposed to fall asleep in the snow. This reminds me of the time... You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. Don't do that. Don't fall asleep in the snow. But honestly, one time I actually almost did fall asleep in the snow. I was going through some stuff. Let's leave it at that. And I was just going out one day, and I brought some alcohol with me. I brought some tequila, I think it was, with me. And I was out, and there's some okay, so this is back where I used to live in a certain location, and I would go, and like within 5 minutes there would be just basically like a clearing essentially, and it had been snowing all day and the night before, so there was a lot of snow, and it was really pretty. And so I was just walking along, walking out, just kind of walking out of stress, I guess, just kind of trying to release my stress, I guess. So I had like maybe two shots of tequila before I went out. This is getting nostalgic now. And so I went out all by myself, I think. I'm pretty sure I went out by myself, and I put on an album. And this album, I highly recommend actually. It's by Snail's House. It is the Snow album. So if you haven't listened to the album yet, I highly recommend it. It's a really, really pretty album. But I was listening to this really nice album, and I was just walking out. I was a little bit dizzy. I was getting a little bit dizzy, and so I brought a bottle with me, a little tiny bottle. It's just enough to get me to like a little under my ideal place, I guess. But I was walking towards this clearing, being very careful, being very slow, being very deliberate. And it was snowing, and I was just walking, and I was walking. Snow got me through tough times, yeah. Yeah, this is one of those times for me. This is one of those times for me where I was listening to this album, and the scenery was just so beautiful, and I was just walking. This was around my birthday, I believe. Around winter time. So I was just walking through the streets, which slowly became gravel roads, which slowly became just dirt. Or rather, not dirt, but snow. But normally it's dirt. So anyways, I'm just walking through. And out in this clearing, there is a railroad track. So this is kind of a dangerous situation, right? So I had a few drinks. I was walking in the snow, alone on my own. I had not been having such a great time. I was walking out, no one knew where I went. I was walking toward some railroad tracks. Obviously, I'm not thinking of anything bad, right? I wasn't gonna off myself like that. I'm not that kind of person. But I was just walking by the railroad tracks, just walking next to them, not on them, because that's dangerous. Never walk on railroad tracks. So I'm just walking next to these tracks, and I come across what was it? It was kind of like a couch, like a mattress couch, kind of little soft, comfy thing. And it's snowing. And so I laid back onto this soft mattress couch thing in the middle of, I don't want to say in the middle of nowhere, but off to the side of the city, like the outskirts of the city, essentially. And so I lay back on this comfy, soft mattress couch thing. And it's just so comfy, and it's snowing, and there's snow all around me, and the music is just right, and I'm feeling sleepy. And I'm thinking, maybe I'll just take a nap here. I feel myself kind of cold. Maybe if I just rest here and wrap myself up with my arms, I can warm myself up. So I just lay down, snowing on me, really sleepy, kind of tired, and I closed my eyes for I don't know how long, a few minutes maybe 10 minutes, 20 minutes, I don't know. And then I realized out of nowhere, I could die here. I'm drunk, no one knows where I am, it's snowing, I'm cold, it's getting dark. This isn't looking too great. So I get up. I get up. It's, I don't know, there was something cathartic about that moment. I had, I was going through a lot that time, and whenever, okay, so essentially, like, I don't know, but like, it's like a certain cocktail of emotions that gets me really nauseous, makes me want to throw up. Some kind of like anxiety, nervous thing that happens. I'm really glad that I'm doing much better now. Occasionally I do get reminded of those times, but it's okay because those times are over. For the most part, I'm doing a lot better. I have people that I talk to, and I'm grateful for these people. But now I have a reason to do what it is that I want to do. Oh, oh no, oh no. Stream looks like it's fine. Okay, okay, yeah, okay. Apparently, OBS was giving me some troubles. Anyways. And it's not like this is unique to me, right? There's a lot of people that struggle with this kind of thing. And whenever I do see these people kind of like venting, I feel like I want to help, but at the same time, it's like, how do I help? I don't know you that well. I've never seen you before now. This would be like, I don't know, Discord, for example, or like a random website. People just like venting, right? And like, I'm not a member of this community. But you see these posts where it's like, I hate everything. My life is terrible right now. And you want to reach out, you want to say things are going to get better, but it's at the same time, you don't really know what these people are going through. And if it came from out of nowhere, it would be like, who are you to come out of nowhere? I don't even know you. To tell me about my life. You don't know me. You don't know my life. You don't know what's going on in my life. And so I end up kind of, I don't know, kind of feeling for them. I guess empathizing with them. But at the same time, I don't want to like offend them by stepping in and like telling them you should do this or you should do that. And at the same time, that's only like some people, right? Some people vent by typing it out, but some people don't and they just keep it in and they never tell anyone. I guess that's a category that I fall into. I generally keep to myself for the most part. Although I do have my outlets. I do have my outlets for keeping sane, I guess, but sometimes it just happens, right? Where you just can't help but it just like comes back, right? But it's okay because it's the only reason. Well, okay, now how do I phrase this? How do I phrase this? If you were to, how do I, without, okay, so let's say you're writing a story, right? And you want to stop writing the story. Or rather, you're reading a book, for example. Hmm. I want to people to get better. Avoid telling them things. It's difficult. It's difficult. It's really difficult. Like I was saying, you don't really know what they're putting up with, and you don't know if things will really will get better for them. So I do understand what you're going through. I don't know if I'd be able to help, but I am available. That kind of thing, right? And then at that point, it's all up to them for them to reach out, essentially, right? But at the same time, it's hard to reach out, especially when you feel like you don't have anyone. And so in that case, I usually divert the conversation. That... Okay, look, it sometimes can work, but at the same time, it feels like you're minimizing their hardship if you're just kind of like glancing over it, right? It's difficult. Every person is different. Every person has their own way of doing things. That's a super long-winded way of getting to this next story. Okay. Long story short, I love winter. I love winter. I think there's something about the bleakness and destitute and the death of winter that's what makes it so beautiful to me. I don't know. Something about struggling against this kind of blackness in a way, darkness that I don't know, I find really romantic in a way. Okay, story time. That wasn't the story, no. This is the story. It makes it hard to walk the dogs. Banned. Banned. Okay. So this is one of those stories that you see online, right? It's one of those stories. I think I scrolled down actually. Let me go back up. Okay. So this is a story that I found online. I don't know what website this is. I've never been on this website before, but I found it. And so I'm just gonna read the story. Let me drink some water first, real quick. Okay. Today, I want to share a story with you about my winter deep in the Yukon with my grandfather and the strange things that occurred during those dark, frozen months. About 3 years ago, when I was at the spry age of 18, I had decided that I wanted to take a year off school before going to university. Do a bit of soul searching, if you will. Well, as it happened, my father decided that this would be a great opportunity. You see, my grandfather Dana had been trying to get me to go out to his cottage for a few years now to learn a little about yourself and your heritage. Now, my grandfather is the toughest son of a bitch I've ever met. Here's an example. When I was 15, my family took me skiing in Jasper, and my grandfather tagged along. During that trip, Dana hit a fallen log that had been ever so lightly covered in snow and plowed straight into a spruce tree. Tore open his lip down to the cheek. Once we caught up with him, and he started to freak out. Once we caught up to him and started freaking out and talking of getting an ambulance, he just calmly stood up, told us, while his lip was hanging open enough to see his teeth, that he would be fine, and he was just gonna go back to his lodge to patch himself up. As it turns out, this involved him skiing all the way back, grabbing a sewing needle and some fishing line, and stitching his own face back together in the bathroom mirror. An hour later, he was back out on the slopes, as if nothing had happened. He still has a vicious scar too. He is a born Swede, a massive guy, around 6'6", and pretty muscled despite being in his 60s. He's a pretty quiet guy and rather eccentric. He lives on his own in the middle of a frozen hellscape at a time in his life where most would be retired, so go figure. The main reason I hadn't gone with him sooner was because my mother was terrified of me going off to live with my crazy relative for any length of time, despite my father's assertion that I would be well taken care of, and I was old enough to fend for myself. This year would be different though. Through some Herculean effort of coercion, likely involving the fact that I was moving soon out anyways, I was granted leave to go with him. My family lives in Alberta, and my grandfather off in the northwestern Yukon, past the Minto Mine, if anyone here knows the area. It was arranged for me to fly out and meet up with my grandfather, who would then drive us out to his home. After landing, I was greeted with the amusing sight of my grandfather standing about a foot above the rest of the crowd, staring forward, waiting for me. We had a quick greeting, and long before had hopped in his truck and were making trail towards places where no roads go. We drove for a few hours, not much said between us, though that was pretty standard for him, and finally arrived at what appeared to be a little more than a snowy plot near the tree line, away from the road. "So where exactly is your cabin? I didn't see it on the way over," I asked him. He turned to me and smirked. "About 3 days walking hiking that way." He pointed into the trees. And so began day one of my adventure, pack slung over my back, and snow up to my calves, and we began to walk. Oops. My immersion. And we began to walk. My first day went pretty normal, something that was not going to last, let me tell you now. Along the way, he would point out animal tracks and different plants, giving me the basic wilderness survival rundown. Now, I had been raised on a small acreage outside of the small town of Athabasca, so I was no stranger to the wilderness, but even still, my grandfather's knowledge of the wild seemed near encyclopedic. Anyways, the first day came to a close as the sun hung low in the sky and the snow glittered in the twilight, a beautiful vista if I have ever seen one. We found a small outcropping and built a fire, set a can of beans and some vegetables to cook, and enjoyed the moment. I slept pretty soundly given the 20-ish degree weather. On the eve of the second day, I was shaken awake and told to start walking. We don't want to spend more nights out here than we have to. It's only going to get colder, and these woods are dangerous. Gathering up what I had, little bit more than a sleeping bag, some clothes, some provisions, and 2 knives, we set off again. Now let me tell you, there is nothing more tiring than pushing through snow. There is nothing more tiring than pushing through snow up to your crotch in the middle of the woods for hours and hours. I like to think I'm in okay shape, but by the time we stopped for a break some 4 hours later, I was ready to die. My grandfather, of course, seemed unfazed by it. He didn't seem to care at all. It was around this time that I started to take note of a few things. For anyone who has lived near or spent a lot of time in the woods, you know it's a pretty lively place. Lots of noise and things moving around. Not here. In the winter, everything is still and quiet. A strange feeling when you've heard all your life that if things go quiet in the forest, something bad is near. The uneasiness was offset by the fact that I was still trying to see it to my lungs. The uneasiness was offset somewhat by the fact I was still trying to see to it that my lungs were going to explode and my grandfather's calm, uncaring demeanor. Soon enough, we had set off again. A few more hours into walking, I noticed a little odd cave down by the hill we were on. The opening had huge icicles hanging down the front, and a few bones could be seen scattered around the area. I turned to my grandfather and asked, pointing towards it, "Should we be worried about that?" At that, he stopped, looked at it for a few moments, and he just continued walking, saying nonchalantly, "Nah, long as we get a ways off before night, it won't matter." When we finally settled for the night, I was sure I would be out before I hit the ground, but without so much as a glance, I was told to wait. He was going to get firewood and start dinner. Sitting myself under a tree, I watched as he walked off, leaving me alone in the dwindling light of day. Sitting there, listening to the fading sound of my grandfather walking further and further away, I couldn't help but notice how strangely suffocating the woods were. Now, I had spent days camping before, sometimes with friends and other times alone, but this seemed different. Maybe it was the quiet, where the simple act of turning your head to the side seemed to echo through the trees. Maybe it was the way the evergreens, burdened with snow, seemed to blend into the growing gloom, forming strange and inky shapes in the dim light. Whatever it was, I started to get nervous. That kind of unease that comes when you feel like you're being watched, even though you're alone. Before my mind started to walk down these roads of thought, my grandfather came stomping back through the tree line, bundle of broken branches under his arm. He set about showing me how to start a fire without matches or a lighter. He's old-fashioned like that. And soon enough, we had a nice little campfire going. It wasn't until the heat of the fire hit me that I noticed how damn cold I was, my hands stiff and slight shivers going over me. "We should reach the cabin by about this time tomorrow if we keep up this pace. Before we go any further, I want you to understand something. Things are different out here, and if I tell you to do something, I expect you to listen. Understood?" I nodded and told him my dad had given me the rundown before I left. "Huh? How much did he tell you?" "Just to listen to whatever you said and to stay safe," I replied, unsure of where he was going with this. "Ah, alright then." He didn't say anything for the rest of the night, and I was too tired to ask. Despite my exhaustion, I found that I laid awake for quite a while, staring up into the sky and listening to the gentle crackling of fire. I don't really know why. I should have had no problem sleeping after the day of hiking, cold notwithstanding, but regardless, I found myself quite unable to drift off even after the moon had risen and shone over the area. It was around then that I heard something in the forest, like a sort of whispering. At first, I figured it was the wind, but looking at the treetops, They weren't moving at all. I listened harder, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. It was so faint. I sat up, and I looked around, maybe to see if there was something there. Or maybe my grandfather had been mumbling in his sleep. But when I tried to listen in again, it was completely silent. I figured it was just a breeze or something, and lay back again. Sleep came soon after. I was once again woken by Dana as the sun had begun its slow creep over the distant mountains. As we were gathering up our equipment, he asked me if I had slept well. I told him that the cold would take a little getting used to, but otherwise it was fine. He just sort of looked at me for a moment before grunting and tying off his pack. Once more we set off, deeper into the wilderness. As we were gathering up our equipment, he asked me if I had slept well. I told him that the cold would take a little getting used to, but otherwise I was fine. He just kind of looked at me for a moment before grunting and tying off his pack. Once more we set off, deeper into the wilderness. The third day went by without incident. It was only after yet more hours of tedious and exhausting trailblazing that we finally came into view of my grandfather's home. Built right up against the cliff face, no windows adorned it, just massive logs the whole way around. A small chimney rose up from the roof, easy to spot given that the trees had been cleared in about a 20-meter radius around the cabin, replaced with numerous small wooden stakes set at varying intervals. As we got closer, I noticed that they were actually fence posts. Barbed wire was strung between them, and every so often, there was a much taller post set a ways back from the fence. In the dim light, I couldn't really make out much about it. In the dim light, I couldn't really make much out of it, although I was curious about why they were there. Whatever the reason, I was in no mood to play 20 questions. I just wanted to get inside and sleep in a warm place. Before we could get in, however, it seemed there were a few things to be done. My grandfather lifted one of the posts out of the ground, allowing us to enter, and told me to put it back and make sure that it wasn't going to fall. He was going to go get the door open. It didn't take too long. The snow around the cabin was much less than the surrounding area, making walking blessedly easier. After I finished, I made my way around the side of the cabin, and I found my grandfather taking down numerous little metallic things hung over the door. I could see them glinting in what little daylight was left, but I couldn't make out what exactly they were supposed to be. Again, I was just too tired to really care, and just wandered inside behind my grandfather as soon as he finished taking the last one down. "That bed over there? That'll be yours," he said, pointing to a small cot at once in the corner of the room. Without much more thought, I ambled over and went to sleep. I really should have savored it more, as this was the last good night's rest I was going to have for a while. I woke up the next morning to a mostly dark room. The candle was set on the table in the middle of the cottage, giving enough light for me to figure out where the door was. Opening it and stepping outside, I was greeted to a bright midday sun. Down the yard a ways, I saw Dana finish clearing the excess snow from the plot of land. It was low enough that I could actually see the ground, and a few feet beyond the fence, The snow rose like a small wall all around us. The light, as well as something in the vein of 14 hours of sleep, allowed me to really take stock of the area around me. I could now see that the tall posts from the night before had been whittled down so that only pale heartwood remained. Carved all over each of them were words. Thousands of them, all tightly packed and varying from neat to nigh indecipherable scratches. Reading through it, there really didn't seem to be a rhyme or reason to what was written down. Mostly it was just random words, mostly in Swedish and a few in Norwegian. I'm not fluent, but I picked up some over the years. I guess Dana had noticed me staring at it because he began to walk over. What are these supposed to be? I gestured to the other posts of similar nature around the yard. They were part of an ordvag, or word wall. It helps keep things calm at night. I wouldn't stare at them too long. Don't do your head much good. In case it wasn't already somewhat apparent, my grandfather was an odd sort. He never liked staying in towns or normal houses, and almost always carried these little runes and charms on strings. I always found it neat when I was younger. I would often ask what they meant, and I'd listen to stories for hours. My mother always had a problem with him visiting. I'd overheard her talking to my dad about allowing Dana to fill my head with crazy nonsense on more than one occasion, but he'd often shrug it off and say something along the lines of, "It's good for him to learn a bit about Dad's culture." The point is that it was only after I really started to get a look at the cabin and the word wall that these things began to sink in. He was definitely a little bit weird at times. The first day we went out to chop a few trees down for firewood, and he would very specifically point out which trees we were going to cut, but only after pressing his ear to them and listening to see if it was unmarked. When I asked him what he meant by that, he said some trees were special to the forest, and that we shouldn't touch them. Otherwise the Tomnessar would get very angry, and we didn't want that. For those that don't know, Tom Tennisar. For those that don't know, Tom Tennisar are part of Scandinavian folklore. They basically look like garden gnomes and act sort of like Santa Claus. At least that's how they're portrayed now in pop culture. Growing up, my grandfather would tell me about these little monsters, about how they would chew open people's doors and windows in order to crawl into houses at night and whisper things to the sleeping people. The people would sometimes go crazy, wandering out into the woods or ranting in incoherent babble. Other times, they would just be sort of different. Either way, they were freaky little bastards, but I stopped believing in the stories around the time I figured Santa was bunk. Dana really isn't known for his sense of humor, so hearing him say that was a little bit more than strange. I sort of awkwardly laughed at it, and he looked at me and said, "You think I'm joking? Keep that up, and you won't be seeing the summer." That shut me up real quick. I still didn't particularly buy the stories, but I still made sure not to tap the trees that he said were marked. We finished loading up the sleds we had brought with us, and at that point, Dana said, "Let's go this way. I want to show you something before we get back." Following him, it seemed to me like we were making a wide arc instead of going straight back, but I wasn't gonna argue. As we walked, I noticed there were no animal tracks, as in, absolutely none. Even on the way to the cabin, I had at least picked up on a few prints from rabbits or moose and the like. When I asked why we hadn't come across any, despite being so far in the woods, I was told, "They don't like it here. No, to stay away was off." Why's that? These woods, they aren't safe for much of anyone after dark, least of all critters. After walking a while longer, we reached a high at the edge of the section of the forest we were in. Dana pointed out, beyond the now sparse tree line, what lay past it was the vast snowy rises and falls of the untamed wild. Honestly, it was one of the most beautiful things I had ever seen. There was an overturned tree, and he motioned for me to sit on it. For a little while now, we just sat there taking in the view until he sighed. Now I know you are going to be new to all of this for a while, but I think you ought to know. Things are different out here. I need you to trust me when I tell you something, or it could get the both of us killed. You understand? I said I did. I figured that he'd have taken my reaction to him talking about the Tom Tenisar to heart. He may be strange, but he means well, so I figured I would humor him and make things easier for the both of us. That would prove to be a very bad idea. Once we got back, I had finished stacking the firewood. Dana broke out more of our dwindling provisions as we were cooking. He said that tomorrow we would need to go hunting. If we caught anything, he would show me how to properly butcher an animal. We ate and settled in for the night. But as we were settling in, he told me that if I ever got up in the night to use the outhouse to the side of the cabin, that I should always bring a candle, no matter how bright the moon was. And that if it goes out, I should come back inside right away. With that, he set a small dangling thing on the door. This is the picture of the thing that was on the door. Some kind of rune. Actual rune. When I asked him about the thing on the door, he told me that it was there to confuse anything that was trying to get in. Later during that winter, I found out it's supposed to be a rune for illusions or disguises. I guess the idea is that it would help it make it harder to tell what was inside the cabin if something got inside the door. The next few days, we went out hunting. For the first while, we didn't catch anything. It wasn't helped by how we needed to head a fair ways away from the cabin before we saw signs of life, and Dana always insisted that we be back before nightfall. On top of that, we didn't bring a gun ever, just a bow and some arrows. I know bow hunting is common enough practice, but given that bears roam these woods, I figured that it would be nice to have something with a little bit more stopping power. When I mentioned this to him, he said that it would cause more trouble than it would prevent. Eventually, we actually managed to find and snag a buck. It was a nice one too, enough meat that we would be alright for a while. We threw it on the sleigh and began dragging it back home. Yet more hours ticked by before we got back to the cabin, and something rather interesting was waiting for us there. Ravens. Normally, this wouldn't seem so strange, but when I hadn't seen signs of life save the trees in this area for almost a week, it seemed a little bit off. Dana stiffened up when he noticed it too. When I asked him about it, he told me, "Drop the sled and come with me. We're going to need to butcher this fast." Not sure where this was going, but remembering our conversation from earlier, and figured that it would just be best to go with it. We circled around the cabin, the ravens sitting on the roof, watching us the whole way. Lying in a small snowdrift in front of the door was a rabbit's head. Just the head, cleanly chopped off. The snow was still a bright red, so it was still pretty fresh. There was also a little indent through the snow leading up to it. It made it look like you had been thrown over here. Well, could be worse. Didn't really need the head anyways. When I asked what he was talking about, he told me, "It's only right to return a gift with a gift. Take that inside and meet me near the butcher shed," which was a little ways off and past the wall, a couple of feet off the tree line. That evening, we butchered the deer, and when we were done, my grandfather took the head, antlers and all, and walked out into the woods a short ways before gently setting it down and coming back. We brought the rest of the meat over to the cabin, and Dana took the rabbit's head off the table where I had just placed it. That night, we had rabbit stew and potatoes. When I asked about why we were going to just eat something we found sitting there, he told me that it would just be rude to throw it out, and it wasn't wise to insult the neighbors. "There's other people out here? I thought you lived alone." "Alone? No, I just don't live by people." Who are your neighbors? Who are your neighbors? I thought I already told you. Tom Tennisar live here. I didn't really have a good response to that. The next morning, when we went out to check the fence, as was becoming routine, I walked out to see the spot he had put the head down. There was nothing there. Not even a bit of blood. The next few weeks went by in relative peace. We would collect firewood every so often. We went ice fishing occasionally, but every morning we cleared snow away from the cabin. The temperature continued to drop as the winter solstice drew near, the already short days becoming a scant few hours of near perpetual twilight. You'd think you would get old seeing the same setting sun throughout most of the day, but you'd be wrong. It managed to be breathtaking each and every time. I probably would have been staring at it all day if I wasn't being ushered along by Dana. Things probably would have continued much the same way if I hadn't messed up one night. It was somewhere around mid-December. You start losing track of the days out here, especially when they're mostly night, and we were going out ice fishing again. We set out early, as the sun was just barely peeking out over the distant mountain range, and hiked for about an hour until we reached a small frozen over lake. We set about like always, checking the ice's thickness and cutting a hold, etc. After only a few minutes into it, we heard the snapping and crackling of branches behind us. We both stopped and stared for a few moments before my grandfather said it was fine, although I could tell that he was bothered. Every so often he'd look back and scan around the trees. We weren't having much luck with the fish, and we were about to call it in for the day when I got a tug on my line. I pulled up a big trout and thought this was great. We hadn't had fish in a while. When I turned to see if my grandfather had noticed, I saw him just sort of staring at it. A little confused, I gave it another look over, and I saw that it had a few huge gashes taken out of it, little indented lines cutting through the grayscales. They were back. "This isn't ours to take." Okay, yes. I was a little nervous at this, although not too much had happened during my time here. I had at least managed to pick up that when Dana got weird like this, it was best not to argue. I threw the fish back into the pond, and we started making tracks back to the cabin. Along the way, I noticed that the trees near the lake, near the ones we had heard the noise coming from, had huge cuts taken out of them. Not like an axe or a bear claws, more like numerous small chunks had been ripped out and thrown around. I asked what was this about, and Dana just started walking faster and said we shouldn't come back here, that it wouldn't be safe. One of my more frequent chores was to go out and make sure the ore bog posts were still secure in the ground. Many of the things that my grandfather was methodical about keeping just right, the word wall came second only to our food stores. This mainly involved going out and giving them a solid shove. If there was any shift, I needed to hammer them back in place and pack the snow tighter around the bottom until I could no longer get it to move. Anyways, that night, he insisted that we go over all of them again before going to sleep, and so we went out after finishing our dinner. Mostly deer. You'd be surprised how long a single deer can last. He took one end of the yard and I took the other. It was getting blistering cold out, where any bearskin started to sting. A cloud cover had swept over the land. There were no stars and no moon tonight, and the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving everything an inky black and gray. It was quiet again. Just like on our hike back up here, where every little movement you made sounded like an earthquake. A little ways off, I could hear my grandfather working, the shifting of his coat, and the snow being pressed underfoot. I was about 3 posts down when I found one that was a little loose. I straightened it out, and I picked up the sledgehammer we had been using for driving them back into the ground. As I lifted it up, I got ready to bring it down onto the posts, cringing because I knew that in the suffocating silence of the forest, this would be very loud. But as I was about to swing it, I heard something, like a quiet, hissing mumble. Reflexively, I swung around while I was bringing the hammer down, and I hit the post with a glancing blow, knocking it off center. Spinning around, I tried to listen for it again, thinking maybe it was just my imagination. The woods often make you think you're hearing things that you aren't. After a few seconds of hearing nothing, and figuring that it was either just me imagining it or overhearing Dana saying something to himself, I turned to start fisking the post again, but as I put my back to the trees, I heard it again. It seemed so quiet that I couldn't make out what it was being said, but I'm sure that it was someone whispering, quickly, and in a whispering, whistle-like tone. I really started to freak out. So I slowly began walking toward the cabin, my back to it and the cliff face, as I scanned the trees looking for where it was coming from. The noise didn't seem like it had a direction to it. It was like everywhere all at once. Still quiet and indiscernible, but very much there. While in panic mode, combined with being tired and cold, I got in my head that if I threw something into the woods, it might scare off whoever was there. Reaching into the wood pile we had outside, I picked up a small log and I threw it into the tree line, and started shouting about how whoever was there needed to come out. My grandfather came running over. Hey! Hey! What the fuck are you doing? I told him I heard someone talking nearby, and before he can say anything, the trees near where I threw the logs started to shake, and I heard snapping branches. Get inside right now! Oh, I'm sorry, was I too loud? I'm getting into the story. he said, not taking his eyes off the trees, so two of us started backpedaling to the cabin. By the time we closed the door, most of the trees had started shaking. Once oppressive stillness of the woods replaced something akin to a hurricane. I'm sorry. I got into it. I'm sorry. That night, neither of us slept, so we just sort of stared at the door, my grandfather holding his hunting knife. Throughout the night, the sound didn't die down. It was so loud and violent, I thought the trees must have been snapped in half. Periodically, we heard things hitting the cabin wall, crunches and ripping noises from every direction. I told myself that it was just branches and the light hitting the wall. It was just a bad storm. Around an hour before dawn, things started to settle down, and soon enough my grandfather got up and went outside. I heard him start to swear and curse, so I hurried out after him and saw what had been done. The outside walls of the cabin had been covered, every inch from top to bottom, with words violently slashed into the wood. Chunks had been ripped out of the corners and the fence was in ruins, some of the barbed wire having been thrown into the treetops, and many of the posts smashed into splinters. After a string of curses that I could barely even understand, he started to calm down. Never, ever do anything like that again. Ever. Come on. We need to get the fence. We need to get the fence fixed before nightfall. And like that, he set off to start gathering up the broken fences. At this point, I had gone from thinking my grandfather was a little unhinged, and it started to take his native folklore to heart, right up to thinking he was the sanest man on earth. I helped him pick up the scattered remains of the fence, so every so often we would find little bits of fabric or hair stuck in the barbs. I didn't want to ask why. We were making good time on having the barbed wire fixed, but I was still worried. Most of the posts that I had made up the word wall were just broken or were missing. When I asked about this, he said that they wouldn't like it, but hopefully they just did it as a warning. Tomorrow, we'll go hunting and bring them back something, as a thank you for not killing us last night. Just as the sun started to set again, at this point of the year, there was only about 6 hours of daylight, making it difficult to do much. We had managed to get the barbed wire back into a rough semicircle around the cabin. Given the damage that had been done the night before, I asked how much good the barbed wire actually was, and he told me it didn't stop them, but it did slow them down since their beards and hats would get tangled in it, and they had a hard time getting free. I couldn't tell if that was a joke or not, but at this point I was ready to believe anything. Little did I know, I hadn't seen anything yet. The problem was that when the occurrence happened, it was almost December 21st, and that means that the cold was near unbearable. That and there was so little daylight that by the time we got back to this part of the wilds where animals roam normally, it was nearly time to begin to head back. The first day we went out, we searched for signs of animals that we could bag. We didn't see so much as a squirrel. That night, the wind was howling again. The creaking of the cabin would get to the point where I thought it would collapse on us, and all the while I would stare at the cracks between the log walls where the candlelight didn't touch, and I could have sworn that I saw things move in the dark. When I finally did drift off to sleep, the last thing I heard was a quiet whispering, like I did before. The next few days were no better. Each time we would go deeper and deeper to the woods, usually in the direction of the distant mountains. We would be frozen stiff to where walking was a challenge for me. I have no idea how my grandfather managed it at his age, but he never slowed down, and we would come back empty handed. Each night, the woods would be louder. The shadows in the cabin seemed to draw closer to the candle than the night prior, and the whispering seemed to get more intense as well. So much that I started to make out words, though none of them were in English, and if they were Swedish, I couldn't understand what I was hearing. On the third night, I asked if Dana could also hear it. He told me to try to not think about it. Each day was more overcast than the one that came before. The daylight was just a lighter shade of gray. It started to get to the point where our own food stores were getting low. Our need to find something became doubly desperate. It started to get worse by the fifth day. It started to snow. Not your simple puffy white snow that you see further south. No. This was big, heavy and wet flakes that seemed more like little snowballs landing everywhere. It clung to everything, weighing us down in the trees alike. All the while, as we walked in the misty forest where we could hardly see more than a few meters, I kept swearing I could see things out there. Little shapes sitting on rocks and tree branches that would be there one moment and seem to disappear as soon as I looked directly at it. I asked my grandfather, and he told me not to acknowledge that, just keep moving forward. The longer the days went, the more of them I would see. It was on the ninth day of trying and failing at our hunts that we returned to a troubling sight. All along the tree line surrounding the cabin, a couple meters off the barbed wire fence, there were a number of large stones, big boulders that came up to my chest. Most were oddly shaped where the tops curved off in a direction. They were all pointing at the cabin. They had been placed every few feet along the tree line, almost like a fence of the forest's own. When we saw that, Dana stopped and said, "Pack your things. We're leaving at dawn." I was not going to argue. Even as we got past the fence and closed the door, I felt like we were still being watched from somewhere out in the snow. It was too dark to see any of the little shapes that had been following us whenever we went outside, but I knew they were there. Hardly a moment when they weren't. We didn't sleep long. Sometime in the middle of the night, between the howling winds and the biting cold, there was a deafening crash, and the door split down in the middle, snow and frost flying in and blowing out the only candle before we even knew what had happened. There was a scurrying noise, and after a few seconds my grandfather had managed to light a little oil lantern he had hanging by the wall. The table and pantries had been overturned. Everything not nailed down was either broken or scattered across the room. I asked if we should leave right now. He told me that's what they want us to do. We should wait until first light. That was the longest night of my life. We sat there shivering and staring at the broken door, the lantern's light just barely keeping the dark, and who knows what else away. Several times I thought I saw something there, just outside the door watching. When I saw the horizon getting brighter, it was like waking from a nightmare. Only this one wasn't quite over. We grabbed whatever had been broken and made for civilization. The snow had stopped, but the clouds still hung heavy above us. It would be 3 days until we got to the truck. We moved as fast as we could. The snow was so deep and clingy that we had to stop every kilometer or so just to wipe it off. It weighed us down more than our packs did. I didn't know how far we traveled. I know we didn't stop. And I don't think we ate until it started to get dark. Dana said to get as much firewood as I could find. We were going to need a big fire. What about the mark trees? I said to him. I still wasn't sure if things could get much worse. Forget them. They're already pissed. It won't matter much now. That night, we had a massive bonfire going. I'd bet you could see it from one of the mountains, it was so bright. Even so, we could hear them out there. The whispers never stopped. Every now and then, a branch or a rock would come flying down at either us or the fire. It didn't make for a restful night. Around an hour before dawn, the snow started again. The second day was worse yet. With the snow back, the little creatures got brave and started coming in close. Every now and then we'd get hit with something that felt from tree branches or a tree along our path that would fall down and make it harder to progress. We didn't walk. We ran through those woods. I didn't think I could run so far, but I don't remember either of us stopping. We just managed to stumble into a little clearing as the light was fading. We hurried and grabbed whatever wood we could find and tried to start the fire. The wood was wet and uncooperative, and the shadows started to close in. We could see the little figures moving at the edge of our vision again. I guess Dana was getting to his wits' end because he grabbed the little oil lantern and broke it open again, pouring the oil across the logs and lit it up with the lantern sparkler. The shadows retreated for a moment, and I think the little monsters were hissing at us. We were left mostly alone that night. Hell if I know why. Maybe even they needed to rest some time. The snow hadn't quit yet by that time that we woke up. So by that time we were mostly covered. We set out before the sun rose. I think Dana didn't trust us to make the rest of the way in only a few hours of light. The trail was a big mess. Trees and rocks littered the animal trails, and the bush was so thick with evergreens that it was no better. It was slow going, and of course we were still being followed. We would catch sight of them at the edge of our vision, watching and whispering in tune with the wind. I couldn't even tell which was which by this point. Sometimes I still can't. For whatever reason, we were left mostly untouched on the way back. The poor trail conditions slowed us to the point that it was already dark, and we still hadn't made it to the truck. Dana didn't want to stop though. He said we were close and didn't want to risk another night outside. I'm not sure when it was, but we eventually made our way out of the trees and onto a road. We followed it for a few minutes until we saw it. The glorious steed that would get us out of that place covered under a few feet of snow and where it was. We swept out the truck bed, threw our things in, and drove away. I don't think either of us looked back. After we got back to town, we stayed at an inn for the night. Best rest of my life. We woke early and drove for nearly the entire day until we made it to the Eric Nelson Airport. When we got back, Dana stayed with my family for a little while at my dad's behest. We didn't talk much about the trip, just said that we needed to come home early. That spring, Dana left and said he was going back home. I asked him what he thought he was thinking going back there, and he told me he had lived in those woods for almost 20 years. It was his home, and he would stay there as long as he had left. He promised to call or visit on occasion. That was 3 years ago. None of us have heard hide nor hair of him. My parents are convinced that he passed away. They're probably right, but I can't help wanting to know. And that is where we come to today. I told my friends about what happened that winter, and they don't really buy it. can't blame them, but we've been talking on and off for about a year now about going on a camping trip. I jokingly mentioned that we should probably go out and try my grandfather's cabin. He thought it was a great idea. We're currently at the Sky Motel in Whitehorse. We are leaving tomorrow morning. I'm still convinced that this is a bad idea, but I want to know what happened when my granddad came back out here. We planned for the trip to be a little less than a month, and we picked summer since I think it's safer than the dead of winter like last time. This is the last story I'm going to be posting for a while. Come the start of September, I'll start a thread, and I'll let you all know what happens. I'll take pictures where I can, and I've brought a couple spare batteries for my phone. Wish us luck. That is the last post made on this thread. What do you think happened to him? Did he make it out? Maybe he didn't make it out. Maybe he did, and he didn't want to tell anyone what happened. We just don't know what happened. We might never know if it was real, it was fake. They might be dead, yeah. They might be dead. I read that story a couple years ago, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But it's always stuck with me. I don't know why, but I can just clearly see every detail of the story in my head. I don't know what it is about this story. I think just like it's a combination of the unknown, right? Where they never really show what it is that's out there, but you get an idea of what it is and how they act. And so I think overall it's a good story. I could totally see it made into like a short film or like a short novel, maybe adapted into a short novel or like a short film. I have never really experienced a super heavy winter. The most amount of snow that I've experienced is maybe like less than a foot, maybe. Not enough for me to like have to exert myself to walk through the snow, but enough for it to be really nice looking. But a lot of the people around me, they say that they don't really like the winter time. I'm guessing because they drive, right? Drive 2011. And so because of that, the snow makes it really hard to navigate around. Which I guess I understand, but even so, I personally don't really need to go out much. And if I do, it's like for groceries, for example, or for work stuff. So aside from that, I don't really go out much. Kind of a neat lifestyle, if you will. I don't really have the need to go out much. I don't have anything that I need to go out for. I do everything in here, in my room. So just generally winter, I like winter overall. It's a really nice, kind of like a comfy season for me. I really enjoy winter in general. It's, I don't know, I feel like with the beach and like summer stuff, there can be some pretty nice artwork, I guess, with like beach sceneries and like sundresses. But at the same time, I don't know if I have a preference for artwork when it comes to seasons. Autumn can have some pretty nice artwork as well, but I think overall I might be just biased towards winter in general. And I'm looking forward to winter. Even though I think we just started autumn, right? Like 2 weeks back, we just started autumn, but I'm looking forward to winter. I love winter. Christmas is my favorite season. Did you know? Did you know? There's 83 days left until Christmas. 83 days. And now, everyone's gonna scream at me for you're forgetting about Halloween. Halloween is cool. I like Halloween. Quiet desolation of winter is nice. It is very nice. I really like winter. It's like the because in a lot of works, winter is portrayed as like a season of death, right? And like as a season of sadness or whatever. But like I said before, I find that romantic in a way. Maybe it's how trees, like trees for example, or like animals, they have to survive through this hardship and they're able to prevail and they come through on the other side as if they're renewed. I just like winter overall. It's much more my aesthetic. It's much more comfy. I was out earlier getting groceries with a housemate and he asked me, how can you like this bleak weather? It's like super cloudy and rainy. And I don't know, there's just something about cloudy weather and rainy weather that I really like compared to sunny where a lot of the time I have to wear sunglasses because it's so bright out because I never leave my room. So I have to wear a hat or sunglasses. But with cloudy weather, I don't know, it just feels much more peaceful. Feels nicer. But with the fall colors, I do agree that it is really pretty with the lot of fall colors. You got both the oranges, you got reds, yellows. Gray clouds are so peaceful and introspective. Yeah, I highly agree with that. I didn't really want to do anything today, but that's been like every day really. I really should stop procrastinating, but it's hard not to procrastinate. It's really hard not to procrastinate when it's just so easy to do anything else, right? But it's hard. It's really hard. I know my brother is really bad with this, where he will just come home from school and he falls asleep. He just sleeps until like 9 o'clock or like 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And then he eats, and then he plays games or whatever on his phone or his computer, and then it's at midnight that he starts to do his homework. And his classes, he has to get up at like 6 the next morning. So the entire reason that he stays up so late is because he's not doing his work at an earlier time. So he ends up staying until like 3 o'clock or like 5 o'clock in the morning doing his work for the next day. And I wouldn't really mind so much if my mom kind of like forces herself to stay up with him so that he finishes his work. And this would be like back when he would be younger. My mom would like stay up until he finished all his work. And it's kind of annoying, you know, like it's not my mom's fault that he didn't finish all his work, that he didn't start his work until midnight. And so there you have my mom losing sleep, and then she has to get up the next morning too for whatever it is that she has to do, either work or whatever other thing. And so my brother is not only sleep depriving himself, but my mom as well. And sleep is something that I've become kind of an advocate for. I read somewhere that a lack of sleep, or rather not sleeping enough, is the equivalent of smoking, apparently, allegedly, according to a couple sources that I read. I don't know how accurate it is, but I do know that low amounts of sleep are correlated with heart disease or the like, something like that. So I know that I myself personally, I don't really sleep as much as I should. So it gets to the point where it's like, do as I say, not as I do, that kind of thing. But I've been trying to get better about it. Today's Saturday? Okay, yeah, today's Saturday, so I don't have to get up early tomorrow. I think. Let me check my calendar. I don't think I have anything tomorrow morning. Yeah, okay. I don't have to get up until Monday morning. So Monday morning is when I have to get up early. And then every day after that, I have to get up early. So I've been trying to drink my sleep tea to kind of prepare myself for that. I know yesterday night I wasn't able to sleep until like 5 o'clock. I went to bed at like 3, but I kept waking up for whatever reason. Probably because I didn't sleep to anything, so it's really quiet. I find it really difficult for me to sleep to silence, so I always need to have some kind of either music or like ambient music or some kind of other thing. So that's why I started listening to let me get the title of one of these. Where is it? So the channel that I usually listen to sleep to is called Sleepwave Cosmic Relaxation, and they have like kind of clickbaity chat titles like ultra relaxing, chill wave ambient music, warning, may cause moody Blade Runner vibes. I don't really look at the titles too much. I just pick whichever one and I just put it on and I sleep to them. These are like 1 to 8 hour videos that are really helpful. I used to put classical music to fall asleep to, but this channel is a lot better for that kind of thing actually. And more recently I've been falling asleep to ASMR streams. I don't know if I can pick on any specifically, but just like quiet ASMR streams, I guess. I want to say I was kind of going for that with this stream, and then I accidentally woke up some people halfway through that with that. I got too into the story, but it's okay. but it's okay. I have one more story. I'm gonna try to be mindful of that. One more story. We're about 2 hours in, so there's enough time for that. I think the story just now was about an hour long, if about 40 minutes to an hour. Okay. This next story I found a lot older, or rather, this other story I found before I found this current winter story. I've known about this one for a while. I don't remember where I found it. But I think when I first found it, it actually creeped me out quite a bit when I read it. I don't think I've speak like this long for 2 weeks now. I think I'm still recovering from whatever it is that I got last week, but it's okay. It's okay. It'll pass. Okay, let me set up for the next story. This next story is something that creeps me out almost as much as aliens, maybe even on the same level. If you're not aware, aliens are like my top fear, I guess. I couldn't really tell you why, but aliens are just one of my top fears for whatever reason. Kind of like how people are scared of, I don't know, the dark or ghosts or heights or bugs. Bugs is my second thing, I guess. I don't really show it, but bugs are one of the things that freak me out too. One time I was in a call with friends and a bug landed on my body. I don't remember where it was, but I screamed out so loud that I scared them. I wasn't expecting that. It just came out of nowhere. It just landed on me. And I slapped it. I think it was a firefly? I'd never seen a firefly before, but I'm pretty sure it was a firefly. Either way, just bugs in general are kind of creepy, gross looking to me. Some are cool. I do like, or rather not bugs, but like arthropods in general, which includes anything that has an exoskeleton. I don't know. I just think it's freaky that for an organism to have this kind of like really hard exterior, it's unnatural to me. Just because tetrapods like frogs, fish, humans, elephants, dogs, our skeleton is on the inside. It's not natural for your skeleton to be on the outside. And with so many legs too, right? The millipedes. I think centipedes are the poisonous ones. Big Japanese beetles, like what are they called? Hercules beetles, as well as the rhinoceros beetles. They're kind of cool, but I would probably get freaked out if one got on me. They're cool, but I wouldn't want to touch them. Oh, do you remember? Okay, this might date me, but there's this one episode of SpongeBob, if you know where I'm going with this, where there's this bug, right? And then there's like a close-up of this butterfly thing. And it's like it fills up the entire screen. I don't know, it's just gross. If it's, ugh. Freak me out. But what if they're legal? The aliens? What do you mean? What did he mean by this? So when I say aliens, I mean like pop culture aliens, like humanoid, big eyes, bald, green skin, gray skin. Those are the type of aliens that freak me out. Not the anime aliens. Those are like completely different. Anime aliens are completely different. Some of them are nice looking to say the least. But just aliens in terms of like Western depictions is what I mean. As opposed to eel. Wow. That's okay. Anyways. Anyways. This next story I read a really long time ago. I don't remember how long ago it was, but let me find this other tab that I was looking for. Where is this? I have like 3 windows and I'm already lost. I usually have like 7, 10 windows. Okay. You know what? I think I'll just leave this BGM. I'm gonna leave this BGM on. Okay. This next one is something that, a topic that freaks me out. Okay. Okay. Just bring this over here. Put this here. Do this. And okay. I think. Do you want me to make it larger? Should I make it larger? Yes, no? Just so that the text is more visible. Wait. Oh, this is tricky now. Well, I'll just give up on that. Okay, anyways, I'm just gonna do it like this. It's fine. It's whatever. Okay, new story. B16 have a family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land down in Huntsville. My uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers they put out in the woods for hunting or camping. I have a few down south cousins that suggest that we go out there to camp. I know I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they really tease me. I collect food, kill a pig, and kill some chickens, and bring necessities out to camp out for a few days. We get to the camp, and it's obvious something is weird. The air has this weird electric smell right before a storm, like ozone. We think nothing of it and unpack and go down to a little creek to swim for a few hours. All of a sudden, some older guy and a teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm and he says hello to us to ask us what we're doing this far back in the woods. I tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and say we're just camping out. He tells us we need to be real careful out here and stick together. There was this big animal in the woods. His son, who is about my age, asks if he can stay and hang out with us. He says sure. So we end up playing football. He's playing around with me, and there's this kid Tanner, five of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. In total, there's about 5 girls and 6 boys. We were all about 15 or 17. We ended up just messing about the entire day. So, oh no. Have a good night, Bingo Panic. Thanks for sticking around. I appreciate it. Have a good night. So, we end up playing football. Messing around with me. Oh, I read that. We ended up messing around the entire day. So we head back to the camp and pulling out some stuff for a campfire, even though the trailers both had kitchenettes. Tanner says that his family's property sits up against my uncle's. He wants to roam home and asks his dad if he can come out camping with us. My cousin Rooster says he's going to go with him since it's going to get dark soon. One of the girls also wants to tag along. It's about 7 o'clock, and it starts to get pretty dark. They take flashlights and take the trail towards Tan's property. The rest of us are pretty chill. We make s'mores, drink, and flirt with the girls. About 30 or 40 minutes later, there's a smell of ozone again. You could smell it over the smell of the fire we had started. There's this really nasty, coppery smell, like right after you've had a nosebleed and it stopped. It wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that nasty, metallic, back of your throat smell. We immediately think it's some kind of electrical malfunction or someone left a hot plate on or something. We search the trailers, and nothing is on, but we can all smell it. All of a sudden, we can hear people booking down the path towards us, and Rooster, Tan, and the girls all come running out of the clearing, out of breath. And they don't even break stride. They all run into the trailer, right by where the fire is. We get out of there and into the trailers. They end up calming down. Even Rooster is crying his eyes out at this point. All the while, the fire is gunning lower and lower. So my other cousins say, whatever, and are about to go outside to get the generator out of a shed between the trailers. Tanner goes, "Oh no!" Lock the front door. Ain't nobody else going outside. He's been crying too. His eyes are bloodshot and puffy and his pants are really dirty. He goes on to tell us that they went up to his house. His father said sure, he could go out back camping, but to make sure they were careful on the way back. That maybe they should go take one of the hunting rifles just in case. Evidently, Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before. One of their pigs had come up, ripped up in half and eaten. And they assumed that it was just some big cats or a coyote, even though they don't usually prey after live animals. So Rooster finally stops crying and shaking. The girls already had, but she was just staring out the window with a dumb look on her face. He says they had gotten halfway into the woods towards the camp when they start to hear something in the forest. It's almost pitch black by this time, so they weren't sure at first what it was. The girl says that she heard something in the bushes right off the trail, and they all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing back in the woods in a little hollow. Rooster said they shouted at him and told him that he was really scaring them, and what a dick he was. He says that's when he realized that the guy was facing away from them. So they keep walking, and they start to smell this nasty coppery ozone smell. They say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side, and it's a dude standing in the forest, backwards, slightly closer to the path. So now they start power walking, and Tan keeps going, "I should have taken the rifle." As they're telling the story, the smell is super strong, even inside the cabin. They say that even after they started walking faster, a kind of low gibbering had started coming from both sides of the woods. As they started booking it back to the trailer, the girl said she had flashed her flashlight out into the woods to the side of them, and had seen something jerking itself through the woods. The gibbering just got louder and louder, and when they could see the light from our campfire, Something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them onto the track, and they had just flat out ran as hard as they could into the trailer. So now, we're out in the woods, and we're assuming at this point it's some rednecks or something trying to start something with us. All of a sudden, our other cousin, Junior, starts going on about how he went to the school with a native kid that was telling him about the goat man or something. We promptly tell him to shut up because we don't need any spooky talk right now. But he just keeps going on and on about how it's the goat man and how we're in his woods and blah blah blah. Now at the time, I'd never heard of this goat man or any of that, but then a couple of years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had a Menon for a roommate, and I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a man with the head of a goat. And he can shapeshift, and he gets among groups of people to terrorize them. It's also supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo, and it's bad mojo to even talk about it. And it's even worse if you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16. So my cousin is going, "The goat man's going to get in, and he's gonna get us." The girls are all terrified, and my cousins and I are all just trying to figure out if it's just some hillbillies or if it's just some animal. So all of a sudden, the smell just goes away. Like, to this day, I haven't even experienced anything like it. Like, usually smells fade away your lesson. It was literally just there 1 second and then not the next second. So it's after an hour, making it around 9 or 10. We've stopped being scared enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again. Figure it was just some guys trying to mess with us, so we don't go back home. Because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or some stupid thing. Nothing else weird happens that night, and we stay another night, and for the main part of the night, nothing happens. At about 1 in the morning, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. As someone is finishing some too spooky story, I don't remember what it was about. The smell comes back. It's so strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting. I stand up, and I can actually feel how clammy the air is. I say we should get back inside, and this isn't right. We should have just left. We all go back inside, and we're all standing around. My cousin just keeps going on and about how it's the goat man, and my cousin Rooster tries to shut him up. All the while, I'm just feeling that something is wrong, but I can't figure out what it is. We end up sitting there for a while. The smell is just as strong, and we're all terrified and huddle up in this camper. We end up cooking brats for everybody because nobody wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 4 brats. We have a total of 3 packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everybody a hot dog. I get mine. After a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot to get another one. He starts grumbling about how I got 2 brats and everybody else only got 1. And I look at him like he's stupid. I tell him that everybody only got 1 because there's only 12 of them. And if he wants more, he should just open up a new pack and cook some more. That's when the girl that had been with Rooster and Tan just starts screaming, "Oh Jesus, oh Lord, go get it out!" She's crying and shivering, and then it dawns on the cousin just standing up what is wrong. Me and him both glance around the room, and then I feel my heart sink. I run out of the cabin, and the girl runs out with us. The trailer door is banging against the side of the trailer as everybody books it out of the cabin. One of my cousin's friends asks us, "What is wrong?" I start counting. There's only 11 now. I shit you not, my cousin verified. There had been 12 people in the cabin. But being that everybody didn't really know each other that well, no one had really noticed the whole time that there was an extra person. And then I realized earlier that I had kind of noticed that something was off. You know, when you're just messing around having a good time, you don't really sweat the small stuff. You don't really keep track of certain stuff. I am dead sure that someone else had been in the trailer with us, and that they had been there for at least a day, eating with us. What makes it worse is, I could figure out which one, because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other person, or the goat man. The girl kept praying to Jesus, and we're all sitting outside. Eventually, we get these big ass sticks and we go back into the cabin, but there's nobody in there. We count again, and there's 11 people. We go back into the trailer and lock the door. We explain what happened, and the girl says she realized that too, and that when he was about to say something, the person sitting next to her grabbed her leg hard, leaned over to her, and said something she couldn't understand. So we're pretty much scared as all hell as we cuddle together, and I fall asleep. When I wake up, the sun is just coming up, and half the people are asleep, and half the other people are packing up our stuff. We all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up, and some people think that we're just messing around and still want to stay at the trailers. I just want to get out of here. The girl's name is Kiara, the one that the goat man had touched. Anyway, I asked her if she really thinks that it was something bad, and she says she just wants to go home. She doesn't want to be out here in the woods for another night. So we decide to split up. The 4 of us that want to go can go, but I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin, and it's my uncle's, and I have to lock up. I'm super pissed at this point because I feel like people aren't taking this seriously, and I definitely didn't want to be out in the woods for another night. I spent the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys, to just get the hell out of there. Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle, and he says that he's coming back. So there's just 7 of us by 4 p.m. At around 5 p.m., I notice that he hasn't made it back yet, and we're getting extremely antsy. And the only reason I stopped begging them to go back was because he went to go get the gun. It's about 5:30 or so, and when the one cousin that did stay says that the girl Kiara is outside, we all look outside, and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, if she was so scared, why would she come back? And then I get this really nasty feeling in my gut. Keep in mind, the whole time the coppery smell has been gone. Now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I say this to the rest of them and everybody. And these are the people that wanted to stay in the woods after we had a goat man in our midst laughing at me and asking if I set this up to scare them. I look at them and I say, I'm not bullshitting you all right now. I asked them, why would I want to do that? So one of the girls outside goes to get Kira. She gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kira starts heaving. I don't know how to describe it. Sort of like if someone with their back turned was laughing without actually making any sound. It was this fact that made me realize there was not a single sound in the whole woods. It was dead silent. This was later in September, so it was still fairly hot at the time, but it was super chilly some days too. And you could usually hear some big geese honking or some kind of birds or squirrels chit-chatting. So I step out of the door and tell her to come back in the trailer right now. She backs up into the trailer and we lock the door. We put down all the shades except one and put a guy there in a chair to watch her. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so. The guy turns to say that she's still there, and there's a huge bang on the door. We all jump up and scrambling around the living room of the trailer. Banging is super loud. So now my cousin is holding one of the girls, and the two other are kind of giggling with nervous laughter, and me and the other two guys are shitting bricks. Then we hear Tan. He's screaming, "Let me in! Let me in! Stop playing!" So we go over to the door and open it, and he stumbles in with a rifle. There's nobody else outside. Evidently, he had walked up to the campsite. Nothing weird in the forest, but he had seen a girl, mind you. He said it was not Kara standing there. When he had gotten to the edge of the clearing, she had turned toward him with a slack-jawed look and just stared him down, slowly tracking him as he walked around the outside of the clearing toward the camp. He said it wasn't until he was almost halfway to the trailer that he realized she was getting closer to him. She had started off by the fire, and without even him seeing her move around, and without him even seeing her move, she had been turning, inching closer. He said he just ran the rest of the way back to the cabin thinking it would open, and when he got to the door it was locked. He turned, and it was about half the distance to the door. He looks around the room, and then he gets super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear, "You know, there's only 7 of us here, right?" I get the feeling where your stomach drops to your guts. It had been back in the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where, and then when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, it slipped back with us. We looked out to the window, and there's nobody there. So we recount everyone, and then basically, I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier. Everybody says 8. I say, "Well, how many are there now?" They all do the count, and realize there's only 7 people here in the cabin. So Tan had brought back a couple of boxes and his rifle. And he told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the forest because he didn't think his dad would believe him if he was the goat man. He says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours and that in the morning we can all go back to his place and his cousin will drive us home. Now I'm really terrified, but at least I feel better because we can be American and shoot whatever it is if he comes back. But then my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks that I'm trying to be funny and prank them, and that she's getting really scared and that I'm not funny. He keeps telling her I'm not that kind of person, and she says, "Well, how do we know the girl just wasn't Tanner in a wig? Or if it's really the goat man, then how do we know this is the real Tanner? And that goat man didn't just kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun?" So we get into a huge argument about this where me and Tanner we could seriously be in danger because at the very least, someone has been sneaking themselves into our trailer without us knowing and mingling with us, and at worst, something bad in the forest is fucking with us. One of the girls is crying and saying she wants to go right now. We're trying to tell her we shouldn't because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point, the sun is starting to go down and it's getting a little cloudy out. We eat something and turn on the radio for a while. but we can't really get a station out here with anything decent. So we turn it off about the time that Tan's cousin shows up. He's about 19, I think. At this point, the sun is just barely over the horizon, and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights with another rifle. He walks up to the trailer, and we whisper to Tan, asking if he's sure that's his cousin. He says yes. The guy looks behind him, and all around the camp, and walks in. He kind of glances at all of us, and looks a little confused. He says, "Where's your other little buddy at? I figured she would meet me up at the cabin. She a little slow or something?" He also asked whether we had been cooking blood in the cabin because it smelled like blood in hot pans all the way up the trail. We were all like, "Nope." But we asked him what he's talking about with the girl he saw. He had come down the same trail Tan had been using, and had come up on one of Yu's guys' buddies, standing in the middle of the trail, looking at him slack-jawed. He had asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was staring at him. Then, she smiled at him, and said he kept walking. She couldn't seem to keep up with him, and kept lagging a little behind him. He said he asked her if she was hurt or something, and if she needed any help, but she continued to stare. Eventually, he had been walking and turned around a bend in the trail. But when he turned around and went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. He'd assumed she had taken some shortcut through the woods to our trailer. We tell him the entire story of what's been going on. I half expected him to say we were lying, but he just listened and then sat down on the couches in the living room. Tanner's cousin gets back to the girl. He says when she had kept trying to lag behind him, it kind of weirded him out, so he tried to keep her in front of him, but no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little behind, and that he smelled this nasty smell, and it got stronger as he got back to the camp. Eventually it got really strong. She had said something really low that he didn't catch, and when he turned around, she had been right up on him, and he stepped back away from her. It was at this point he asked her if she was okay, and if she wasn't, him to carry her back to the rest of the way, and she just kept staring. He said he reached out for her, as in to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance because she was off to the side of where he had put his hand. Like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point, we know this is real. Unless Tan is playing a joke, which we can tell he's not, because he's almost pissing his pants. So they load up the rifles, we eat some more, and we just kind of sit around until about 11 o'clock. To this day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it's just some huge prank that my cousins play on me, and just never revealed, so I would shit for the rest of my life. At around 11 o'clock, the stink of copper turns into an actual nasty, gross, blood-like smell. Like cooking blood and singed hair. Tanner and his cousin, Reese, get up instantly and grab the rifles. There's this like half knocking, half clawing at the door. I shit you not. There's this voice. And it sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs where owners teach them how to talk. It says in this halting, weirdly toned voice, "Let me the fuck in! Stop playing around!" It made my fucking nuts creep against my body, and one of the girls just starts crying and calling on Jesus. It was so obvious that it wasn't a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence, and that's something that I never realized until that moment, but all people have a certain cadence when they talk, no matter the language. All people have some kind of rhythm to talking. This didn't have any kind of cadence or rhythm. One of those YouTube cats, that's what it sounded like outside the door. So now I'm in full terror mode. We keep yelling outside, who is it? Stop fucking around, man. And it just keeps saying, let me the fuck in, for about 15 minutes. Sounded like that. Just not funny at all. So then the smell goes away for a while, and for the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping around in the woods and shit. Every couple minutes it'll come back into the door and say something. Let me in. Finally, when the faint smells away, it's about 2 o'clock in the morning now, Reese says, "Man, fuck this," and opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot in the air and says something to the effect of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away. In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." He fires 2 more times, and then, from the woods, right up against the river across the trailer, it sounds like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. Then it starts screaming, and it sounds almost like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like, seriously, I've never heard anything like that before. And you can hear the brush over that way start to shake. Reese fires over into the tree line and starts back into the house. We lock the door, and we can hear the shit keening and screaming. Reese says something had come out of the bushes super low to the ground and crawling towards the cabin. He had shot at it. Pretty much, that's how the rest of the night went. It was literally screaming constantly for the next 2 hours. We could hear it moving out of the tree line, but it never came back to the cabin until everyone had fallen asleep. Tan had been sitting in the chair watching the door with his rifle. Nobody else heard or saw this. He told me 2 days later, after the whole thing was over. He said he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped, and he had been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and then lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. He assumed it was one of us and he just nodded off. Then he said he realized something was wrong, and while pretending to be asleep, he counted us. There were 9 people in the cabin. He basically didn't want to try to shoot at the thing in the cabin and have it kill us all then and there, or have Reese wake up and start shooting and then we kill ourselves. So he just stayed awake all night, pretending to be asleep. He said sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittery thing or heave like it was laughing, but then it would lay down. The story closes pretty weak because from my perspective, nothing happened. We woke up, and I noticed that Tan was a little jittery because he was avoiding looking at all of us, but we ate some breakfast, we packed up, and we started walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin, and said he'd lock up and bring me my uncle's keys to just start walking and he'd catch up, which I really didn't want to do. We got up a little bit past the path, and when he came running up, we basically just jogged back to his house. His cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. Tan hadn't gone back to lock up and look in there. We were too stupid to lock a screenless door. A screenless window. The window was open when he went in there. I'm guessing it had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up and then get in among us. It walked with us the entire way back to his house, and then he said it lagged to the back of the group and looked them dead in the eyes before walking back into the woods. Amogus. That is the story. That is the story. Those are the 3 stories. So, moral of the story is, don't play Among Us. I wanted to be sleepy by this time. I'm not sleepy. That's not great. I should be sleepy by this time. I think it's probably the computer light. It's fine. I will be another sleepless night. I'll probably end up sleeping at 6 o'clock. Oh, I just realized I do not have my time thing clock in the corner like I usually do. Whatever, it's fine. So, yes, the story of the goat man. The skinwalker, so to speak. I want to say it's probably the same entity. This goat man or skinwalker, whatever it is. I don't know, there's something about the concept of a skinwalker that really freaks me out a lot. Like almost to the point of aliens. Because aliens, they're kind of like a supernatural thing, right? But with these, well, I mean, not that. They're more like an extraterrestrial, not of this plane, less of a chance, right? But there's so much about the woods, and there's so much that happened in the woods that we don't really know about. So I don't know. It's just something about. I feel creeped out even just saying the word skinwalker, but I don't know. I feel like saying just their name like kind of attracts them. I don't know. I'm just being like hyper paranoid. But I feel like it's more of a real threat, especially with a lot of stuff that happens in the woods. I talked about this before, I'm pretty sure, but there's this guy, David Politis, I'm pretty sure. He keeps track of disappearances in the woods. And these are people from like 2 years old to like 60 years old, and like all types of people that go missing in the woods. And the circumstances around their disappearances are very, very strange. Paranoid Squad, yeah, that's me. I'm very easy to scare. I'm a little bit unnerved right now, just because we're talking about the topic of the thing. Oh, speaking of the thing, that's one of the concepts, right? With the thing, with the movie, right? Where it's like it takes the thing from the movie takes the form of one of your um one of your party members, so to speak. So it's kind of like this concept of like you don't know if your friend is your friend or not. And so it kind of goes back to that kind of paranoid distrust of others, that it kind of like takes advantage of that, and it just like makes you hyper paranoid. There's this other thing that I was thinking about just now. It's called, let me see if I can find it actually. I think it's called The Ritual. It's a movie. The Ritual, where it's a bunch of guys and they go hiking in the woods. Let me see. The Ritual 2017. 5 friends meet at a pub and discuss plans for a group holiday. Yep. So this is the movie The Ritual. It's kind of similar. It's without really like talking too much about it, it's about 5 guys. They go into the woods and some really weird stuff happens in there. I highly recommend it actually. There are no jump scares. I am terrified of horror movies. I really do not do well with horror movies, but this was a good horror movie. It doesn't have any jump scares that I can remember anyways. But there's this one scene in the movie that really stuck out to me. I shouldn't be even thinking about this, but for my work, I go out into the woods often. And And there's a scene that could very well happen to me. And it's even worse because there's these five guys traveling together, right? No, I'm alone in the woods by myself whenever I do my work. And I try not to be out there too late. I've almost been there too late at one point, but I got out luckily just in time before it got dark. But then there's another time where I got caught in the dark and I got lost in the woods, and my phone was dead, and my flashlight was dead, and so I'm just like walking in the dark in the forest, and I lost the trail. So I'm just walking, and I'm just like hoping that I come across something or something, and it's like very twilight, very low light, and so I'm walking across the woods. And this is before I got lost. I was just walking on the trail and I was trying to follow the trail. And then I'm just walking and I'm walking and I'm trying to get to the other side of this trail back to where I was. And then I get to this certain point and I'm looking around myself and I think, wait, I've seen this tree before. I've seen this rock before. These two rocks look super familiar. Did I come here before? So I really think that I looped around without even really thinking about it. But I ended up looping around in a big circle in the woods. And I came up to the same point where I was before, like half an hour or an hour ago. Before at that point. And then it's like maybe 20 minutes before it gets dark, like completely dark. So I'm starting to freak out. I sent out a quick last message to my friends. Hey, I'm in the forest. This is my last location. And then my phone dies. And so I'm just like desperately walking through the woods, jogging at this point through the woods, trying to find the trail again. But there's so many leaves on the floor that I can't find the trail anymore. So I'm just walking and walking the entire time praying that there's not something out there, because I'm a really paranoid person. I get super paranoid, extremely paranoid when I'm on my own. So I'm like, to the point where if I step on a branch and it moves like a foot away, I actually get scared of the branch. Or like if I step on a branch and it cracks like a foot away, I will get scared of that. Oh man, but this is like low light, maybe like 7 o'clock. It's 20 minutes until nightfall. So I'm just walking and I lose the trail and I have no idea where I'm going. My flashlight doesn't work. My phone is dead. Even though I charged it, I had charged it, but not enough apparently. So I'm just walking, and I'm praying that I find some kind of trail, but I cannot find my way. And then I come to a point where this entire time I follow what I think is a trail. Good night, boys. Try not to stay up too late. Good night. I appreciate you coming. Have a good rest. I'm gonna end soon anyways. I'm just telling this last story, but have a good rest. Thank you for coming. Okay, so I come to this point in the woods, and I lose the trail. And I have no idea where I'm going. So at that point, I start to head towards what little light there is left, towards the north or whatever, I guess, towards the sun, towards the light. And the sun is already gone, like for over an hour by now. It's completely dark. and I can barely even see a foot in front of me. Even worse because I don't have my glasses on, so I cannot see at night without my glasses. I need them. I need my glasses to see anything at night, and I forgot my glasses at one time. So I'm just walking through the woods in the dark, no phone, no flashlight, no visibility. I cannot see. I almost died again that night until I hear a car in the distance, and that's probably what saved me because I start walking towards that car, and I start walking and walking and walking, and there's no trail here. It's just a bunch of bushes, short, thorny bushes, and grass and trees. But I'm walking towards the sound of this car. It was like, it wasn't a still car, but rather it was just like a room kind of car thing noise, just like a flyby kind of thing. So I start walking towards the noise of the car that I heard off in the distance, and I come into a clearing, and I am extremely thankful that I am familiar with this place, this clearing rather, because it's, well, let me just describe. So I come out into this clearing, and there's a lot of weird structures here. So there's like a tree, right? And it's not a normal tree, but a metallic tree. It's made out of like cans and glass and bottles. And it has wires for branches. And off the branches, it's hanging like reflective things on it. And that's just one of the things on there. And then, like a few feet away, there's a chair like structure just there. And then there's another square thing that's like kind of marked off, kind of like a fence, but using weird structures, like unnatural things that shouldn't be in the forest, kind of weird. So you have these like human-made objects in the forest, but they're not used for human purposes, if that makes sense. So it's like wire, but wire and metal forced into the shape of a tree. And then you have another chair. And then there's this other structure where if you watch what's it called? The movie, there's this movie called the Blair Witch Project. There's this structure. There's like this weird triangle structure rune thing in the movie. And it looked very similar to that. And then I walk further down this path, and there's this kind of like bridge like formation thing, like a door kind of. It's like a donut in the ground, but it's like large enough to walk through, if that makes sense. And it's lined with a lot of paint and glass and metal in this kind of like conglomeration thing. And it kind of looks like a portal that you have to walk through. Now, thankfully, I had come here before, and I actually knew what this location was. It turns out, yes, it was an art project thing. So I'm extremely thankful that I knew what this place was, and I was familiar with it, so that when I came out into this place, I knew where I was. And I knew where to go from here. But if I didn't know, I'd be extremely freaked out because it's like middle of nowhere forest and there's these weird structures that shouldn't be here. But no, it was someone's weird art project out in the middle of the forest. And from there, I knew where to walk towards. And I got out and I lived to tell the tale. The 5G trees. Yes, it was the 5G tree. So I guess that ended up being like 5 stories, right? The first story, my story with the snow and the almost falling asleep on the trail on the railroad. And then the snow story with the Tom Tenisar. And then the third story with the Goat Man. And now this story with I almost died again. Those are the 2 times that I probably almost died. The tangents are real. It's fine. It's fine. They add to it. They add to it, honestly. Don't they? Okay, I'm almost done with my tea. I'm not too sleepy. Though I should be. I almost died again. Yes, yes. I am. Night, Nikki. I am what? Oh, sleepy, you mean? Yeah, I'm planning to end soon. Yeah, I'm just doing a wrap up real quick. So, we're at the 3 hour mark. So, I was like super. How was I? I've been tense this entire time. Like my muscles have been tense, so I need to stretch for. I don't know. I'm usually not tense, but I am right now for whatever reason. I was tense during the winter story. Okay, let me wrap up here then. That is the 3 stories that I wanted to share. Short, real quick announcement. I will not be able to stream for the next few weeks due to personal things that I need to do. So I'm gonna do those things and I need to cut back on all of my distractions. I've already done that on a few other things. I ended up installing a different operating system on my computer just so that I wouldn't get distracted. So I'm pulling out all the stops here and I need to cut out every single distraction, including my operating system. I installed it on a separate drive so I wouldn't lose anything. Okay. Thank you everyone tonight for stopping by. I appreciate it very much. Yes, I knew what OS. I'm extremely very easily distracted. I procrastinated way too long. I have 2 weeks and I have a lot to do. But it's okay. We're gonna make it out alive. We're gonna make it out alive. We're gonna make it out alive. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. We're gonna live. It's fine. Yeah. Either way, I'll definitely be back by Halloween. I have some. I still have a lot of plans left, so I still have more things that I want to do. I just can't do them right now. Okay. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. I love you all platonically. And I will now. How do I? Well, I can't really do anything. Well, but it's okay. We will all hope together that we make it to tomorrow morning, and we will all be in one piece, which is real. Okay. Thank you, Ness, for coming to stream. I appreciate your presence. Thank you, Liliger, very much for coming to stream. I appreciate your presence. Thank you, Aegis, for coming to stream. I appreciate your presence. Thank you, James Jameson, for coming to stream. I appreciate your presence. Well, the scroll's broken. Thank you, Bingo Panic, for coming to stream. I hope you're sleeping well right now. And for anyone else that's listening, I thank you. I'd like to thank you as well for coming to stream. Follow my Twitter so you can know when the next stream will be. My Twitter name is same, it's just SG Mininiki. I post all my updates on there. Next stream is gonna be the week of Halloween, possibly. Maybe the week before, I'm not sure yet. But I gotta get through this thing first. I gotta make sure I get through this. But we're all gonna make it. We're all gonna make it because I believe in you. Whatever it is that you're working on, I believe in you. You have worked on your projects, and I believe that you can get through whatever hardships you may face, encounter, and we're all gonna make it. Even if it takes a week, a month, a year, maybe 10 years. My dream has been 10 years in the making, and it's coming down to this, so we're all gonna make it. We're all gonna make it one way or another. Thanks a lot again, and I will see you next time. Have a good night.